You're looking at one of Canada's most recognizable buildings, Ottawa's Notre Dame Cathedral Basilica. Now, at first glance, it's just this incredible masterpiece of soaring spires and amazing art. But if you look a little closer, you'll see a story of conflict, of compromise, literally carved right into its stone.
Yeah, it became a National Historic Site back in 1990, and for good reason. It's absolutely beautiful. But here's the thing. This icon wasn't born from some single grand vision. Its real story is so much more interesting. It's a story of false starts, competing egos, and a fascinating identity crisis.
So, how on earth did something this magnificent emerge from the mud of a 19th century lumber town? Well, the answer is in the dramatic, messy, and fascinating story of its construction. A story that, as you'll see, is literally written on its walls.
All right, to really get this, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning, to this rugged little frontier town called Bytown, which, would one day grow up to become Ottawa.
So back in the day, the community's goals were pretty modest. We're talking about workers, merchants, and by 1832, their little wooden chapel was pretty much falling apart. By 1839, the plan was just to build a solid stone church to replace it. Thinking about some grand, awe-inspiring cathedral? Nope, that wasn't even on the radar yet.
Okay, so they start building this simple stone church, right? Well, this is where things get really interesting, because as soon as construction began, the whole project was thrown into this state of constant, dramatic change.
On the left, you've got the original plan from 1841. It's neoclassical, very solid, orderly, with those round arches. It was inspired by the big church styles over in Quebec. But then, this new priest, Father Adrien Tellman, he arrives from France with the vision you see on the right, the much more dramatic, modern, and very trendy French Gothic revival.
So he takes one look at the half-built walls and basically says, nope, this has no style. He was a huge fan of the French Gothic revival, and he insisted on a radical change, away from that grounded neoclassical look to the soaring, dramatic, pointy arches of neo-Gothic that were all the rage in Europe.
And this is the coolest part. You can literally see this argument playing out on the building today. If you look at the cathedral's facade, those rounded doorways at the bottom, that's what's left of the original plan. And the pointed windows and towers soaring above them, that's the triumph of the new Gothic vision. It's an argument frozen in stone.
And believe it or not, the identity crisis didn't stop there. Get this, it was named a cathedral in 1847 while it was still a construction site. The iconic steeples we all know weren't even added until 1858, and the beautiful curved back of the church wasn't finished until 1862. It was a cathedral built in pieces over decades.
All right, so the stone shell is mostly done. Now the focus shifts inward. It was time to fill this vast, empty building with some art, with some soul, to create an interior that was worthy of being in the nation's capital.
And this stunning interior, just look at that famous vaulted ceiling with the blue and gold stars, was pretty much the vision of one guy, a priest-architect named Georges Bouillon. In 1878, he was given carte blanche, basically a blank check and total freedom to design the cathedral's entire interior decoration.
But he knew he couldn't do it alone. So he put together an absolute dream team of the best French-Canadian artists of the time. We're talking the legendary sculptor Louis-Philippe Heber, who did the main altarpiece, master woodworkers Rochon and Parizel, the stained glass genius Guido Nincheri, and the famous organ builder Joseph Cassavant. This was the crew that was going to give the cathedral its soul.
And wow, this transformation was not an overnight job. As you can see, from when they started in 1878 to when they installed that massive organ in 1892, it took more than a decade of intense, painstaking work to create the incredible sanctuary and that star-filled ceiling we see today. It really seemed like, okay, now the masterpiece is finally finished.
But a building's story is never really finished. Turns out, one of the cathedral's biggest challenges was completely invisible, and it only popped up a few decades ago. Maintaining a treasure like this is a whole other saga.
So, you're standing on the floor, you look up, and that ornate plaster ceiling looks absolutely perfect, right? But in the 1990s, somebody climbed up into the dark, cramped attic space above it, and what they found was, well, terrifying.
This is what they found. These are the plaster keys. They're basically these little hooks of plaster that are the only thing holding that entire heavy ceiling up. And they were just crumbling into dust. By 1999, they figured that up to 40% of the plaster was in danger of just collapse.
Now here's the real kicker. The normal way to fix this it would have been a total disaster. They would have had to tear down the bad sections from below, which would have meant destroying up to half of the original, historic, beautifully painted plaster. They had to find a better way. So instead, conservators came up with this absolutely brilliant, out-of-the-box idea. They decided to work entirely from the attic above. The team painstakingly cleaned every single inch of the wooden slots, like you see on the left. Then, they carefully injected a modern acrylic adhesive, that's what you see on the right, to basically glue the fragile plaster back onto the structure from behind.
And this team, I mean, their incredible work in these really tough conditions, saved the whole thing. Not a single piece of that original decorated plaster was lost. It was just this perfect blend of honoring the old-school craftsmanship of the past with the amazing ingenuity of the present. So it really makes you ask, what does it even mean for a building to be finished? The story of Notre Dame just shows that a landmark like this isn't some static monument frozen in time. No, it's a living record of competing visions, of amazing artistry, and of continuous dedication. From the very first stone to the glue they used in the attic, its story is always being